Welcome back to my new YouTube channel. The cafe was quiet, tucked in the corner of a sleepy street where the noise of the world rarely reached. It was one of those places that smelled like comfort, roasted coffee beans, old books, and something warm in the oven. He sat in his usual spot by the window, a man of very few words. Every morning, around 8:30, he'd walk in with the same gray hoodie, order a black coffee, and take his seat near the rain-stained glass. The staff had gotten used to him, even liked him, though none could claim they knew much about him. Not his name, not his story, only that he always carried a brown leather notebook and sometimes, a child's lunchbox. She noticed him on a Tuesday. That's when her shift changed. She was filling in for a friend and happened to be behind the counter when he walked in. He didn't speak much, just nodded, paid in cash, and offered a small, thanks, as he took his coffee. His eyes, however, said more than his voice ever did. Tired, cautious, but kind. There was something about the way he watched the world through the window, like he had seen too much and wasn't ready to look away. Over the weeks, she began to expect him. She would have his coffee ready just as he stepped through the door. He noticed, smiled once, and nodded slightly deeper than usual. That was the start of something, though neither of them knew it. One rainy morning, she finally asked. Simple, gentle, real. Do you always come here alone? He looked at her, surprised, not offended. It was a fair question, asked without judgment. Not always, he replied. Sometimes I have my daughter. But she's at school most mornings. A pause. A breath. I'm a single dad. It was the first time he had said more than a sentence to anyone there. She smiled softly, as if to say she understood more than he might think. From that day on, things shifted, quietly. She learned his name was Armin. His daughter was 6, named Ira, with eyes like her mother's and a laugh that could lift any weight from his shoulders. His wife had passed away 3 years ago in a car accident. He had stopped talking about it because every time he did, people offered condolences he didn't know what to do with. So he chose silence instead. It was easier to live that way. But she wasn't like the others. She didn't flinch at silence. She didn't rush to fill it. She let it stretch and settle between them like an old blanket, worn but warm. She was 27, new in town, an artist with a broken engagement behind her and a dream she hadn't quite figured out. She painted in her apartment, worked shifts at the cafe, and rode a bicycle with a squeaky chain. She'd lost people too, not to death, but to disappointment, betrayal, and slow fading goodbyes. They began talking more, a little each day, a sentence here, a story there. Armin found himself wanting to share, wanting to know her story. And she found herself watching for him in the mornings, feeling a little brighter when he walked in. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was something older, something slower, trust. One evening, he brought Ira. She was shy at first, clinging to his leg with tiny fingers. But the moment the woman behind the counter, whose name she now learned was Sana, offered her a free chocolate muffin and asked if she liked to draw, Ira smiled wide. Sana took out crayons from behind the counter and a paper napkin. Ira began to draw right there, humming a song from school. Armin watched, something softening in his expression. He hadn't seen Ira open up to anyone that quickly in a long time. And he hadn't smiled like that in a while either. They sat together that day. Shared stories about childhood, parenting, dreams they had buried, and ones they still carried like folded paper in their pockets. After that, they became something of a trio, a quiet man, a little girl with stars in her eyes, and a woman who had learned how to heal without hiding her scars. Time passed. Seasons changed. Snow came and melted. Trees bloomed and wilted. They never forced anything. There were no declarations, no confessions. Only small things. Like how Armin would walk Sana home when her shift ended late. Or how Sana began to leave little drawings in Ira's lunchbox, tiny surprises that made the little girl giggle at school. They built a rhythm, a life not defined by tragedy but touched by it, and stronger because of it. Then came the moment. It was a Saturday. Warm, golden. They were at a park. Ira ran ahead, chasing bubbles. Armin and Sana sat on a bench, watching. She turned to him and asked, not nervously but curiously, "Do you think you'll ever love again?" He looked at her, long and steady. Then, after a while, he said, "I think I already do." No music played, no dramatic background, Just whined through the trees and the laughter of a child nearby. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. They stayed like that, together in silence, knowing that something had changed, not suddenly, but surely. The cafe became their place. The people noticed but didn't intrude. They smiled when they saw the three of them walk in. Armin still wore his gray hoodie. Sana still wore paint on her hands. Ira still loved chocolate muffins. But now, there was something more. A family. Not perfect. Not traditional. But real. Armin, once a quiet single dad, found not just someone who listened, but someone who saw him, not just his grief, but his growth. His effort. His heart. Sana, once afraid to trust again, found someone who didn't need to be loud to be strong. Someone who showed up, not with flowers or promises, but with presence and patience. And Ira, the child who had lost her mother too soon, found a new kind of joy. A woman who braided her hair on weekends, helped her with homework, and called her sunshine in the morning. It wasn't a fairy tale. Life still brought challenges. There were bills, bad days, and moments of doubt. But they faced them together. One morning, years later, Ira drew a picture at school. It was a simple drawing, stick figures, a house, a tree, and three people holding hands. When the teacher asked who they were, she said, without hesitation, "That's my mom, my dad, and me." The teacher smiled, confused. "But I thought." Ira just nodded. "She's not my mom by blood," she said, "but by love." And that was enough. Because sometimes, the most beautiful stories aren't the loudest ones. They're quiet. Like a single dad who sits by the window. Like a woman who simply asks, "Do you always come here alone?"